They assumed that sorrow had driven her to distraction. When Catherine's husband passed away in the spring, the townspeople anticipated she would grieve discreetly, sell their modest dwelling, and relocate to her sister's residence in the city. That was the conventional course for widows. That was deemed appropriate. Instead, Catherine took her 7-year-old son, Oliver, and vanished into the mountains. "She's lost her senses," the villagers murmured at the market. Poor soul. The ordeal was too much for her. "Taking that child into the wilds," Mrs. Peterson had remarked, shaking her head at the baker's establishment. "It's practically a crime. Someone ought to alert the authorities." "I've heard she's taking up residence in a cavern," the pharmacist had added, like some sort of primitive. "That poor youngster will grow up uncivilized." Yet Catherine wasn't fleeing from her sorrow. She was moving towards a purpose, a scheme her husband James had confided in her during his final moments. Those closing weeks had been agonizing. James had valiantly battled the cancer for 2 years, but ultimately it had prevailed. Catherine had sat vigil by his hospital bedside, holding his hand, observing him drift in and out of awareness. On one of his clearer days, he had grasped her hand with surprising firmness. "The old hermit's den," he had whispered, his voice strained. "Remember the one we stumbled upon while hiking when Oliver was just a baby? You could establish something there, a secure haven, removed from everything." Catherine had initially believed he was speaking incoherently due to the morphine. "Hush now, James. Rest." "No, listen." His gaze had fixed upon her with sudden intensity. "I've been contemplating this for months. The extensive medical expenses. They've depleted all our resources, Katie, every last bit. But the land is already paid for. Those 5 acres I acquired years ago, the parcel everyone deemed worthless due to the precipice. It's not worthless. You could construct something there. I drafted some designs. They're in my notebook. The blue one. Promise me you'll examine them." "I promise," she had vowed, tears coursing down her cheeks. "Promise me you'll give it genuine consideration. Not for me, but for Oliver, and for yourself. You possess a fortitude that no one truly comprehends, a strength far greater than you realize." He had passed away 3 days later. In the weeks following his funeral, as she meticulously reviewed their financial records and grasped the meager inheritance he had left, the overwhelming medical bills had devoured their savings, their retirement funds, and even the accumulated value of their small cottage. His parting words had resurfaced in her mind. She had discovered the blue notebook nestled within his desk drawer. Inside were detailed sketches, precise calculations, and comprehensive plans for a stone residence to be integrated into the very cave entrance they had discovered years prior. The architectural renderings were exquisite. James had possessed considerable talent as an architect, though his professional success had been modest. He had consistently favored intriguing projects over financially lucrative ones. These preliminary drawings depicted a dwelling that bore resemblance to a medieval cottage, a hobbit dwelling, and a fortification all at once. The concept appeared utterly unfeasible. Catherine had spent hours contemplating the designs, then made a resolute decision that would irrevocably alter the course of her life. She had sold their cottage. The bank was poised to initiate foreclosure proceedings anyway, and she had utilized the modest sum remaining after settling all outstanding debts to procure essential provisions. Subsequently, she and Oliver had loaded a borrowed truck and journeyed to the cave that James had proclaimed would be their salvation. The cavern was precisely as she recalled it, a vast natural amphitheater carved into the sheer rock face, shielded from the prevailing northern winds by the mountain itself, and oriented southward overlooking the expansive valley. The opening measured approximately 30 feet in width and 20 feet in height, with the interior extending back into obscurity for at least 40 feet. A gentle trickle of water descended one wall, originating from a hidden spring deep within the mountain, forming a natural cascade that subsequently vanished through fissures in the stone floor. "Mother, are we truly going to reside here?" Oliver had inquired, his youthful voice echoing off the rocky surfaces. He had been remarkably subdued since his father's passing, intensely withdrawn. This marked the initial instance in weeks where he had exhibited any semblance of curiosity regarding his surroundings. "We are going to construct a home right here," Catherine had corrected him gently, kneeling to his level. "A proper dwelling, The very one Father designed for us. Just you wait. It's going to be absolutely magnificent. The village cleric had attempted to intervene prior to their departure. Father Michael had appeared at the cottage just as Catherine was finalizing the packing of the last few crates. "Catherine, I implore you, this is utter folly. You are a widow with a young child. Please accept assistance. The church possesses resources. Your sister has generously offered you sanctuary. Do not squander your life on some fanciful notion." "It is not a fanciful notion, Father. It is a meticulously crafted plan, a sound strategy. This is born of pride, false self-reliance. James would not have desired this for you." Catherine had ceased her packing and met his gaze with unwavering steadiness. "James imparted this vision to me. On his deathbed, he drew the blueprints. He purchased the land years ago, anticipating a future need, and I intend to honor his wishes for us." He was at death's door, Catherine, in considerable pain. His thoughts were not entirely lucid. He was exhibiting greater clarity than anyone else. He foresaw what was impending, the bills, the mounting debt, the loss of everything, and he provided me with a path forward. I am embracing it. Father Michael had merely shaken his head. "The village will pass a severe judgment upon you for this course of action." "The village judged me harshly for choosing to wed a humble architect rather than the banker's son. The village judged James for prioritizing artistic fulfillment over financial prosperity. I am utterly finished with living my life according to the village's expectations." She had driven away before he could offer further protest. Oliver sat silently in the passenger seat, clutching his father's blue notebook as if it were a precious artifact. The initial week spent at the cave had proven to be the most arduous. Catherine had pitched a tent within the sheltered interior and commenced the daunting undertaking of rendering the space habitable. She had diligently cleared away debris, loose rocks, ancient branches, and accumulated animal droppings from decades past. Every sinew in her body ached. Her hands, initially prone to blistering, had subsequently toughened and calloused. However, Oliver had begun to emerge from his introspective state. He assisted by transporting small stones, fetching water from the spring, and exploring the cavern's depths with a flashlight. One evening, as they shared a simple meal illuminated by a campfire at the cave's mouth, observing the sunset cast a golden hue across the valley, he had quietly remarked, "Father would have adored this place." "Indeed," Catherine had affirmed, her throat feeling tight. "He most certainly would have." She had initiated the construction with the most basic element, a stone wall intended to partially enclose the cave's entrance, leaving adequate space for a doorway and windows. The mountainside was strewn with limestone fragments, perfectly suited for building. She had developed the ability to discern suitable stones by sight, identifying those that would interlock naturally, thereby minimizing the necessity for mortar. The labor was physically demanding. Each stone had to be laboriously hoisted, precisely positioned, tested for stability, and often repositioned. Catherine had no prior experience with such strenuous physical exertion. She had been a librarian before Oliver's birth, a life immersed in books and quiet contemplation, yet she discovered within herself reserves of strength she had never suspected existed. James's notebook became her guiding scripture. He had included meticulous annotations regarding stone selection, the precise ratios for mixing mortar, and the requisite wall thickness for optimal insulation. She adhered to his instructions with unwavering devotion, envisioning his voice offering gentle guidance. "Not precisely that way, Katie. Observe how this particular stone possesses a flat facet. That is intended to serve as your foundational surface." By the month of June, she had successfully erected 3 feet of the wall. It was rudimentary in appearance, yet remarkably stable. Oliver had also contributed by placing a stone within the wall, a small, smooth specimen that James had collected during a beach vacation years earlier. "So, Father is part of the house now," he had explained. Catherine had embraced him, struggling to suppress her tears. However, the villagers' derision had escalated once news of her endeavors spread. Catherine required provisions on a regular basis: lumber, cement, nails, tools that she could not readily borrow. Each excursion to the village hardware emporium became an ordeal of profound humiliation. Constructing a dwelling. "You, the proprietor," Mr. Carlson had chuckled upon her initial visit with James's detailed procurement list. "Madam, You possess no rudimentary understanding of construction. Where is your contractor?" "I am the contractor." He had actually let out a snort of derision. "You intend to erect an entire residence by yourself within a cave?" "Yes. That is the most imbecilic notion I've ever encountered." "What are you, some sort of troglodyte?" "I am a widow facing limited alternatives and possessing unyielding determination. Will you provide me with the lumber or not?" He had ultimately sold her the materials, but she had overheard him exchanging jests with other patrons as she loaded her truck. "The deranged widow believes she's Bob the Builder. Give her a month and she'll capitulate and return to the realm of common sense." The narrative had disseminated widely. Individuals began making excursions up the winding mountain road solely for the purpose of gawking at the eccentric widow constructing a castle in the clouds. They would park their vehicles along the access route and hike upwards, equipped with cameras, treating her as if she were a peculiar roadside attraction. One Saturday in July, a group of inebriated teenagers arrived, pelting the cave entrance with rocks and shouting taunts. "Crazy lady! Cave dweller! Where is your husband? Oh, right, deceased!" Catherine emerged from the cave, brandishing a hammer, her eyes ablaze with such fierce indignation that they recoiled in alarm. "Remove yourselves from my property immediately," she stated, her voice eerily calm. "Now, or I shall summon the sheriff." "For what reason?" "We are merely observing." "Trespassing, vandalism, harassment. Take your pick. You have 10 seconds to comply." They departed, but not before one of them had spray-painted the word "crazy" onto a boulder situated near the access road. Oliver had observed it the following day. "Mother, why do they harbor such animosity towards us?" Catherine had knelt beside him. "They do not despise us, my darling. They are apprehensive. When an individual undertakes something unconventional, something courageous, it instills fear in those who lack the fortitude to emulate it. Consequently, they endeavor to diminish the brave individual. But we are not insignificant, are we?" "No," Oliver had affirmed, standing taller. "We are constructing something that Father envisioned and that renders us formidable." "Precisely. By the month of August, the entrance wall had been fully erected. It stood 8 feet in height, 3 feet in thickness, with thoughtfully positioned apertures for a door and 2 windows. Catherine had acquired the skill to precisely cut stones for a perfect fit, to meticulously layer them, and to waterproof the mortar joints using techniques she had gleaned from ancient masonry texts borrowed from the library. She had installed a robust wooden door that she had constructed herself, meticulously following James's detailed plans. While not flawless in its execution, it was sturdy and functional, capable of being securely locked. The inaugural night they had spent behind that secured portal, Catherine had experienced a profound sense of internal peace. They were safe, shielded. This endeavor was genuinely materializing. Her sister Rachel had paid a visit once in late August, undertaking the arduous trek up the steep pathway in unsuitable footwear, vociferously complaining throughout the entire ascent. Upon finally reaching the cave and witnessing the structure Catherine had erected, she ceased her tirade mid-sentence. "Oh my goodness," she had stammered, awestruck. "Katie, you actually constructed this." "I am still in the process of building it." Rachel had circumnavigated the entrance wall, her hand trailing along the stones. "It is remarkably solid. I had anticipated it would resemble a mere pile of rocks, or something akin, but this is substantial construction. James certainly designed it well." Rachel had then turned, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Katie, I apologize. I have behaved appallingly towards you, labeling you as irrational, even suggesting to Mother that you required institutionalization. But this," she gestured helplessly towards the edifice, "this is simply magnificent. You are magnificent." For a fleeting moment, Catherine had harbored a flicker of hope. Perhaps she had found an ally, someone who truly grasped her situation. However, Rachel had then continued, "But you cannot remain here indefinitely. It is still not a suitable existence for Oliver. He requires formal schooling, companionship, a semblance of normalcy. You have unequivocally demonstrated your capability. Now, return to civilization. Come and reside with me. I have that additional bedroom available." And in that instant, Catherine had comprehended that Rachel fundamentally misunderstood. She admired the architectural achievement, but still perceived it as a temporary project, a passing phase, something Catherine would eventually outgrow. "This is our home, Rachel. Oliver and I are remaining here. But the winter we will manage." Rachel had departed, promising to visit again, but never did. Catherine had watched her sister descend the trail and felt the profound weight of isolation settle even deeper within her. She was navigating this journey alone, truly alone. Yet the work persisted. By the month of September, Catherine had demarcated the interior space with wooden partition walls, thereby creating distinct living areas. A bedroom for Oliver, featuring a window that offered a panoramic vista of the valley. Her own sleeping quarters situated in the cave's most secluded and tranquil recess, and a communal living space incorporating a cooking alcove along one side. She had meticulously crafted furniture from lumber and reclaimed wood, a sturdy dining table, 4 accompanying chairs, bed frames adorned with rope mattresses stuffed with mountain grasses. A building inspector had made an ascent in October, responding to numerous formal complaints lodged by villagers. He had arrived anticipating the immediate condemnation of the structure, expecting to uncover glaring code violations, and prepared to find ample justification to halt this peculiar undertaking. Instead, he dedicated 2 hours to a thorough examination of every aspect, diligently recording observations and capturing photographic evidence. Finally, he had turned to Catherine, his expression one of considerable bewilderment. "Madam, to be perfectly candid, I arrived here anticipating a catastrophic failure, but this is, well, it is certainly unconventional, but structurally sound. Your stonework surpasses what I observe in a significant portion of the projects undertaken by certified contractors that I inspect. Furthermore, you have a functional water supply." He had scrutinized her collection system, marveling at the ingenious method by which she had channeled the spring water into a stone basin, complete with a clever overflow mechanism. "This is remarkably ingenious. Did you devise this system yourself?" "My husband conceived of it. I executed its construction." "Your husband was an astute individual, and you are clearly a proficient builder." He had subsequently signed off on his official report. "You are in compliance with all applicable codes. It is an unusual dwelling, but it is entirely legal. I shall submit this report to the county." This official validation had not, however, curtailed the villagers' continued mockery. If anything, it had intensified. The populace seemed incensed by her persistent success, as though her achievements constituted a personal affront to their unwavering predictions of her ultimate failure. Catherine's mother had placed a telephone call in November, shortly before the initial snowfall. "Catherine Marie, I implore you. Return home, bring Oliver with you. You have made your statement. You have proven your capabilities. Now cease this endeavor before it culminates in tragedy." "Mother, this is our home. This stone dwelling is far more structurally secure than any rented apartment I could possibly afford. We possess potable water, adequate heating, a sufficient food supply. We are secure here. You are residing within a cavern. I am residing within a dwelling that I constructed with my own hands, a dwelling that my husband designed, a dwelling that is entirely paid for and will never face foreclosure." "Can you assert the same regarding your own residence?" Her mother had abruptly ended the call. The isolation had become absolute at this juncture. No familial support, no companionship from friends. Her former acquaintances from the village had ceased all contact, evidently uncomfortable with the unconventional choices she had made. It was solely Catherine and Oliver, and the stone house that steadily progressed towards completion with each passing day. Yet Oliver was flourishing. He devoted hours to exploring the mountainside, meticulously collecting intriguing rocks and meticulously organizing them by type. Catherine imparted lessons in mathematics by utilizing their construction projects as practical applications, calculating volumes, measuring angles, and determining load-bearing capacities. She nurtured his literary development by reading aloud each evening by the warm glow of lamplight. They had progressed through half of Tolkien's epic saga of Middle-earth, a narrative particularly fitting for a young boy dwelling in a stone abode carved into the side of a mountain. "Tell me again about father," Oliver had requested one evening in November, nestled cozily in his bed as Catherine tucked him in. This had become a cherished ritual. "He was courageous," Catherine began, as she invariably did, "and imaginative, and he possessed the remarkable ability to perceive possibilities where others saw only emptiness. He looked at this very cave and envisioned a home. He looked at me and recognized someone possessing the resilience to construct it. Was he correct? What do you believe? Oliver had surveyed his bedroom, taking in the meticulously finished stone walls crafted by Catherine, the wooden shelves she had erected to house his collection of rocks and books, and the window that framed a breathtaking, unobstructed view of the starry expanse. He was correct. You are the most formidable person I know. Catherine had tenderly kissed his forehead, fighting back tears. We are formidable together, you, me, and Father's dream. November brought the initial serious weather advisories. Meteorologists were forecasting an exceptionally severe winter, potentially one for the history books. The village commenced earnest preparations, diligently stocking provisions, inspecting all backup generators, reinforcing roofs, and acquiring additional heating fuel. Catherine also prepared, but in her own distinct fashion. She had dedicated the entire autumn to the relentless gathering of firewood, meticulously stacking it in the dry rear section of the cave until she amassed a supply she estimated would suffice for 4 months of continuous burning. She had meticulously insulated the entrance wall with thick layers of moss and a mixture of clay and straw, creating an exceptionally effective barrier against the prevailing winds. She had purchased and carefully stored a substantial quantity of dried foodstuffs, canned goods, essential medical supplies, lamp oil, and candles. She had also acquired a pair of snowshoes and procured heavy-duty winter attire, along with emergency blankets. The proprietor of the hardware store had processed her extensive purchase with a discernible smirk. Planning to weather the apocalypse up there, are we? Planning to survive the winter? You should do the same, madam. I have personally experienced 40 winters in this valley. I believe I'm adequately prepared. Excellent, Catherine had replied with measured composure. Then we shall both be well. However, she had observed his inventory. Stock levels were alarmingly low, and few customers were investing in supplementary provisions. The village appeared to be exhibiting a degree of complacency. They had weathered every prior winter. Surely they would survive this one as well. Catherine, however, refused to entertain any element of chance. The initial snowfall arrived in late November. It was light and possessed a captivating beauty. Catherine and Oliver stood at their doorway, observing its gentle descent across the valley below. Their stone dwelling remained comfortably warm, the wood-burning stove radiating a gentle heat, and the cave's inherent thermal mass effectively retained the warmth. They were adequately prepared. Then December descended with apocalyptic ferocity. The tempest struck on the 3rd day of December, a colossal weather system that meteorologists began to label as unprecedented within a mere matter of hours. 3 feet of snow accumulated within the initial 24 hours, followed by an additional 2 feet, and then yet another 2 feet. The temperature plummeted precipitously from 15 degrees Fahrenheit to 20, and then to 25 degrees below zero. Wind gusts attained speeds of 70 miles per hour, creating conditions of complete whiteout and wind chills capable of causing severe frostbite on exposed skin within mere minutes. In the village situated below, the crisis rapidly escalated. The electrical grid succumbed on the 2nd day. The sheer weight of the accumulating snow on power lines, the ice encrusting the transformers, and the immense strain placed upon the system by every household simultaneously operating electric heaters all contributed to the widespread failure. The backup generators at the community center were depleted of fuel by the 5th day. The roadways were rendered entirely impassable, buried beneath 6 feet of accumulated snowdrifts. Propane delivery trucks were unable to navigate the treacherous conditions. The emergency provisions at the local grocery store were exhausted by the 7th day. Residents found themselves trapped within their homes, devoid of heat, without electricity, and facing dwindling food supplies. Within the stone residence nestled into the cliff face, Catherine and Oliver remained secure and comfortable. The cave's advantageous positioning shielded them from the most severe winds. The entrance faced south, thereby deflecting the ferocious northern blasts that were tearing the roofs off houses in the village. The stone walls, each 3 feet in thickness, retained the heat generated by their wood stove with remarkable efficiency. Catherine maintained a steady, rather than frantic, burning of wood. The cave itself maintained a temperature of approximately 45 degrees Fahrenheit, even without the stove's operation, and the fire brought their primary living area to a comfortable 65 degrees. They had ample illumination from oil lamps and candles. They possessed a considerable supply of food from their stores, including canned vegetables, dried beans, rice, and flour suitable for baking bread. Their water source, the spring, never froze due to its origin deep within the mountain's geothermal system. They had an abundance of books to peruse by lamplight, various games to occupy their time, and music provided by Oliver's harmonica. "Mother, are the individuals in the village safe?" Oliver inquired on the 6th day, peering out through their window at the obscured, snow-covered expanse beyond. "I sincerely hope so, my darling." But Catherine harbored profound anxieties. She was unable to discern the valley. It was completely invisible, shrouded in snow and darkness. The absence of any lights at night indicated that the power remained out. She contemplated Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman who lived alone, the families with young children, and her own mother, residing 2 hours away, who habitually kept her home excessively cold to economize on heating expenses. On the 8th day, when the snowfall finally ceased but the temperature persisted at a brutally low level, Catherine made a crucial decision. "Oliver, I need you to remain here. Ensure the stove continues to operate. You know precisely how to manage it. I am going down to the village." "Mother, no. It is far too perilous. There may be individuals who require assistance. There are people who might need aid. I must ascertain their condition." She meticulously strapped on the snowshoes that the hardware store owner had previously derided, packed a rucksack with supplementary food and essential medical supplies, and commenced her descent down the mountain. The journey required 3 hours of arduous exertion, but she possessed a robust physique honed by months of construction, and the vigorous physical activity effectively kept her warm despite the sub-zero temperatures. What she encountered in the village was profoundly heartbreaking. The houses stood dark and utterly silent. Some exhibited shattered windows, casualties of the relentless wind. The streets resembled deep canyons filled with snow. She made her way towards the community center, which she could discern emitted some form of light from within, likely from candles or battery-powered lamps. Upon entering, she discovered nearly 200 individuals huddled together. The backup generator had failed, rendering the building scarcely warmer than the frigid outdoor environment. People were swaddled in every blanket and coat they possessed. However, Catherine could readily observe the telltale signs of hypothermia: uncontrollable shivering, profound confusion, and debilitating lethargy. Numerous children were audibly crying. The elder residents were remarkably immobile. The local clergyman was the first to notice her. Father Michael's expression shifted from surprise to contrition, then to a flicker of desperate hope. "Catherine, you've managed to descend from the mountain. You're all right, warm, fed, and secure. What is it you require?" Over the ensuing hour, Catherine surveyed the dire circumstances. Provisions were alarmingly scarce. The propane heating units had depleted their fuel reserves. Numerous individuals required urgent medical care, but the impassable roads prevented any ambulance access. The hamlet found itself in a profound predicament, with no immediate relief in sight. "How have you been managing?" inquired Mrs. Peterson, her voice frail and weak. "Up there, in that cave." Catherine crouched beside the elderly woman, carefully adjusting an additional blanket from her pack around her shoulders. "The cave remains warm. The stone retains heat. My wood-burning furnace is highly effective, and I made preparations." "We ridiculed you," Mrs. Peterson murmured. "I labeled it child endangerment. I signed that petition. I am profoundly sorry." "It is acceptable," Catherine replied, though it wasn't. Not truly. At this moment, our priority is ensuring your well-being through this ordeal. For the subsequent 3 weeks, Catherine became their beacon of hope. Relocating everyone to her modest stone dwelling was an impossibility and would have exhausted her resources within days. However, she was capable of rendering assistance. Every alternate day, she made the descent, transporting essential supplies, firewood from her stored reserves, provisions from her larder, and medical necessities. She instructed the villagers on the proper method of melting snow for potable water, the most effective way to layer clothing for optimal warmth, and techniques for conserving body heat. She conveyed news that aid was indeed en route. She had ascended to an elevated vantage point where her emergency radio could establish a connection, and she learned that the National Guard was actively engaged in clearing the roadways. The proprietor of the local hardware establishment, Mr. Carlson, observed her arrival on the 10th day. He had visibly lost weight. His countenance was gaunt, yet he was alive. "You were correct," he stated simply, "regarding everything. The preparations, the cave, all of it." "I did not wish to be correct," Catherine responded. "My sole desire was for security." "How did you foresee this? How did you anticipate this when none of us did?" Catherine's thoughts drifted to James, his hand clasped in hers on his hospital bed. "Someone who cared deeply for me instilled in me the ability to perceive potential, to brace for the worst while cherishing the best, and to never assume that established systems would endure indefinitely." Young families offered tearful expressions of gratitude for the sustenance she provided their children. Elderly residents grasped her hand with heartfelt thanks for the warmth of the firewood. The local priest bestowed his blessing upon her, although she questioned his entitlement after his earlier attempts to impede her. On the 15th day, Oliver expressed his earnest desire to accompany her on a supply excursion. Catherine felt a measure of reluctance, but he reasoned, "Father designed this house for both of us. If you are assisting because of what he constructed, then I should lend my support as well." Together they undertook the journey, Oliver exhibiting perseverance despite the challenge on his smaller snowshoes. Upon their arrival at the community center, the children present regarded him with a degree of awe. This boy from the mountain, hale and robust, while they were frail and famished. Oliver shared his midday meal with 3 of them, and Catherine experienced a surge of fierce pride that momentarily eclipsed her exhaustion. By the close of December, emergency services finally reached the village. The National Guard had successfully cleared the primary thoroughfare, and supplies began to flow in. Electricity was gradually reinstated, though complete restoration would require several weeks. The crisis had not fully abated, but the most severe phase had passed. Catherine and Oliver embarked on one final journey, this time merely to check on the well-being of the residents. Father Michael met them at the church. "Catherine, I owe you an apology. More than an apology. You saved lives, dozens of them. Had you not been prepared, had you not shared your provisions," he shook his head, "I mistook your faith for arrogance. I was mistaken. Your conviction in your husband's vision, in your own resilience, is what saved this village." "I did not undertake this for the village," Catherine stated candidly. "I did it for my son. The village merely benefited incidentally. Nevertheless," he conceded, "thank you." Others echoed his sentiments of gratitude. Mrs. Peterson, now recovered, embraced Catherine and wept. The proprietor of the hardware store extended a lifelong discount on any future purchases. "Not that you likely require anything from me anymore," he added. Young families expressed a keen interest in how she had constructed the stone dwelling and whether she would assist them in building similar residences. The earlier derision had entirely vanished, replaced by profound respect. Yet Catherine perceived the emerging chasm it created. She was no longer one of them. She was the woman who had been prescient, who had endured, and who had ultimately rescued them. It was a victory tinged with a singular loneliness. January brought further snowfall, though nothing comparable to December's catastrophic events. The village slowly recuperated, but a fundamental shift had occurred. Discussions began to center on preparedness and the inherent vulnerability of the systems they had long taken for granted, and Catherine's telephone remained incessantly active. A regional newspaper sought a feature article proposing the headline, "Widow Stonehouse Withstands Historic Storm." Architectural journals requested photographs and blueprints. A reality television program focused on survival enthusiasts expressed interest in featuring her. Her sister contacted her weekly, offering apologies, commendations, and pleading for Catherine to overlook her past doubts. Most unexpectedly, young individuals began making the trek to her home. Architects, builders, and proponents of a self-sufficient lifestyle. They journeyed to observe the stone house, posing questions and meticulously taking notes. Catherine found herself imparting her knowledge, disseminating James's designs, and elucidating the principles of thermal mass and natural insulation. A particular couple, Ben and Sophie, both urban architects, returned repeatedly. Initially impressed by their first visit, they became increasingly fascinated and eventually captivated. "We are currently designing an eco-village," Sophie explained during their third visit. "Sustainable cliff dwellings, earth-sheltered residences, all with minimal environmental impact. However, we consistently encounter obstacles, challenges you have already surmounted. Would you consider providing consultation on this project? They offered substantial financial compensation, exceeding any amount Catherine had encountered in years. I am not an architect, she demised. No, Ben concurred. You are superior. You are a builder with practical experience. You have weathered the most severe winter in a century in a dwelling you constructed yourself. That holds more value than any academic degree. Catherine glanced at Oliver, who had been listening with rapt attention. What are your thoughts, buddy? Should Mom take on a consulting role? Father would say, yes, Oliver responded with unwavering confidence. He would say, you've earned it. Consequently, Catherine accepted the offer, and over the subsequent months, a new professional path unfolded. She provided consultation on sustainable construction projects, designed subterranean residences and earth-sheltered homes, and conducted workshops on stonemasonry and natural building techniques. Individuals compensated her generously for her expertise, an expertise cultivated from James's notebooks and her own desperate imperative to create a secure haven. By springtime, Catherine had amassed sufficient funds to implement enhancements to their stone residence. She appended a small, enclosed greenhouse to the entryway, utilizing salvaged windows, thereby establishing a year-round space for cultivating produce. She installed a more efficient water heating apparatus. Within one of the cave's adjacent alcoves, she constructed a compact workshop. Other families also commenced building on the mountain, acquiring parcels of land adjacent to Catherine's property and establishing their own sustainable abodes. What had originated as a solitary sanctuary was evolving into a community, albeit one distinguished by shared principles of preparedness and self-sufficiency. On the anniversary of James's passing, Catherine stood at the threshold of their dwelling, their home, perpetually theirs in her heart. The valley below now displayed a verdant hue, its meadows speckled with wildflowers. She held the cerulean notebook, its pages visibly worn from continuous consultation during the construction phase. I did it, she whispered. Everyone mocked us. Everyone declared me misguided. But I constructed what you envisioned, James, and it is magnificent. It is robust. It safeguarded us. It aided others. From behind her, she heard Oliver's laughter mingling with that of the children from the other mountain families. She heard the rhythmic sound of hammers as Ben and Sophie worked on their own cliff dwelling nearby. She heard music emanating from someone's radio. The symphony of life's continued progression. The mockery had transformed into admiration. The isolation had yielded to camaraderie. The sorrow had been transmuted into purpose. Catherine's hand grazed the stone wall she had erected with her own labor. She felt its tangible solidity beneath her palm, sensing the strength she had forged from adversity and unwavering resolve. Some individuals erect barriers to isolate themselves from the world. She, however, had constructed walls robust enough to eventually permit the world's re-entry. On her own terms. Mom, Oliver called from within. Sophie wants to know if you'll show her your water collection system design. Catherine smiled, tucked James's notebook beneath her arm, and entered the dwelling. The home she had meticulously carved from stone and sheer determination, from profound loss and enduring love, from the final bequest of a dying man to his devoted wife. The courage to conceive and realize the impossible. They had deemed her irrational. They had been mistaken. And now, as winter approached once more, everyone would be ready, because the widow residing in the stone house had imparted to them all the essential knowledge for survival.